It doesn't mean that it's not easy. It's simple.
How do you stay ahead of the trends and adapt your strategies?
I love the idea of being able to get people to learn something, get them to do it, and then get them to teach it.
Once the objection came, I'm like, oh, this again. But then after sitting with you, I was just like, no, I expect the objection. Of course, people are gonna have objections.
Haven't subscribed already? Hit that subscribe button. Turn on that notification bell. I appreciate you guys so much.
Super excited to be here with Joe Marcoux. I met him out in Mexico and he definitely changed my life. He's the founder of SOS Dojo. Was lucky to participate in some of their classes, and he's a sought after keynote speaker, been on stages with people such as Corey McKinnon, even Craig Ballantyne. And in the past 30 years, he started as a specialty retail in the fitness space, ended up owning and then selling that business. And he's trained thousands of salespeople now to really just become consistent closers. And I love how he sells because it's not a very pushy style. It's more so build a relationship and want the other person and make it a win-win for building their own business. So super excited to be here with Joe.
Patrick, thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited. And it's funny, you and I met. Here are two guys that are born and raised in Winnipeg, and we actually meet for the first time in Cancun, Mexico at a mastermind, which says a lot about you because, we all know that proximity is power. So when you pay to be around other people that want to have that, like you on your hat, 11 out of 10, I've got my water bottle, 11 out of 10, right? So we want to have that lifestyle. And so suddenly when we're all introducing ourselves, and this is a small group of high achievers. And at times, when I don't know if you felt this way, there's times when I'm in a mastermind group where somebody tells us who they are, what they do, and what they've accomplished. I'm like, I don't know if I should be in this room. And it's great because there are some people that they're not out to make themselves look better. They're out to help lift you up. They're there to help lift me up. And it's great. So yeah, it's been a pleasure to get to meet you. I think it's been almost a year.
I think it's been almost exactly a year.
Yeah. And then since then, I've joined your program, which has been awesome. And both Shauna, my wife, and I are learning the value of what you're doing in terms of real estate, because, yes, we do very well financially. The fact of the matter is, doing well financially, you have to have a variety of different vehicles. And the vehicle that I've always been really, standoffish with has been real estate, not because it's not a good vehicle. It's because for me, it was listen, I'm not a carpenter. I'm not an electrician. I don't want to be fixing washers and dryers. And then what you've taught is that, hey, there's way more to this than that. Yes, it's opportunity, and it doesn't mean that it's not easy. It's simple. And there's a difference. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here. And let's go over some stuff. Let's give some value to some people.
Oh, I'm excited. And then, I guess to start, tell us a little bit about the story of founding SOS Dojo. And I know you actually you did transition away from the fitness business. So how did that transition go? That must have been scary in what I'm just imagining.
It's funny because even though there was a shift in terms of the fitness business, I'm now still heavily involved in the health and fitness industry now as a resource for those people that are coaches, online coaches, health practitioners, gym owners, and they're coming to me and my team because I'm not alone anymore. And we're helping them develop what we call a BC, which is a buying conversation. You hinted at it earlier. People don't want to be sold. They want to choose to buy. So we have a roadmap that works with any language, because the idea of sales as a business, as a vocation, as a career, you're in sales. So we're all in sales. Kids are in sales, right? They're relentless. So the thing is that when you do it well, people don't feel sold. People feel compelled to want to decide to buy. So how did it start? Well, being this kid from Winnipeg, I started off in the retail industry back at 17 years of age. And full transparency, I'm 52 now. And I'll just fast forward very quickly. I had retail stores. I sold them. I was I was lucky to be part of a company that went from, we were store number 7 and we went to 38 locations in a year and a half. So learned about scaling, learned about marketing, and learned the fact that you got to keep growing. And so from there, went to the manufacturing side and became a rep. And what I learned as a representative for different manufacturing companies in the exercise equipment industry, and there's always a link to the bike industry, by the way, is that people think they know how to sell and they don't. In fact, the psychological aspect of this is horrible. And that's why a lot of people hate sales, and they hate sales people. And Patrick, if I said to you, when you think sales, if I said to you, salesperson, what comes to mind?
Before, my immediate thought would be like sleazy car salesman,
right?
Trying to rip you off type thing.
Right, that's it. And so the thing is that how do we frame ourselves to be in a frame of mind to be able to be known as, hey, look, I'm a trusted advisor. And my goal here is I want to make a friend. I want to help somebody out. And ultimately, if what I have fits their problem with the right solution, then and only then can I show what I've got. Otherwise, no. I'll send them to the place where they need to go. So if you do it right, like you've got an ETR, earn the right to pitch. And so what ended up happening was I worked with manufacturers in the fitness industry, and I was helping retail stores as a consultant. And I was noticing that like people who are horrible salespeople, all they would do is pitch. Nobody wants to be sold. So I went in with my approach, and I wrote a book back in 2007 called Boutique Thinking in a Big Box World. And now more than ever, it's something that I still feel it holds weight today. Excuse me. And so we go from there. When the book came out, I started doing consulting. I was consulting for mostly retailers in the fitness, health, and wellness, and in sporting goods. It was a lot of fun. I traveled all over Canada, the United States, Europe. It was a blast. And I even went to Asia a couple of times to go do some public speaking, which was a blast. Then ultimately what ended up happening, let's fast forward. It's 2019, 2020. I'm still an army of one. I'm going to various businesses. I'm traveling all over the world, which was great and was also a pain. In 2020, I was slated for 144 days of travel. I had 144 days of travel booked. Now, that's not the difference was, and a lot of people, you know this, people think travel is this, oh man, hotels and airplanes and airports, and you're smiling because you get it. If you have to travel versus you get to travel, there's a difference. And so before the pandemic, and you notice how we do things pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. So pre-pandemic, totally. I had to travel. And I met a coach who and he's the guy who gave us the 11 out of 10, Craig Ballantyne. And I mean, I'd had mentors and coaches before. Craig made a huge difference, made an impact. And at that point, Craig and I were just getting things started, and he knew where I wanted to go. And I'll tell you, like before we started recording, you were saying to me, how are things going? And I've got these problems that 4 years ago I was wishing for. So they're just new problems. I've got these incredibly fun challenges of, hey, I got to hire new people. I've got to tell the marketing team to slow down because believe it or not, we've got too many leads that we can't ignore. I mean, it's a good problem. It's a really good problem. So what ended up happening is it's 2020. I've got 144 days of travel booked. I'm an army of one. I'm in Washington, D.C. doing a speaking engagement, and then the borders shut down. So I got to come back to Canada. So I fly home. And for the first couple of weeks, it's like, well, this is fun. Got a little bit of a holiday. It's all good. The thing is that my business was reliant on me having to be in front of people live. And I had to be there like in person. So that was problem number one. So then a month goes by and I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm digging into my cash flow here. Like I don't have any cash flow. I'm digging into my reserves and I'm not comfortable with that. And I don't like debt. Now, again, you're helping me understand that it's okay to have debt. In fact, you're teaching me that, and I'm the old guy between the two of us here. I come from that again, mindset. I come from that space where you want to get rid of all debt. And what you're teaching me is no. There's some good debt to have. And that's where you're going to be able to create generational wealth. So if you're not, by the way, if you haven't like hooked up with Patrick yet, like you have to. Anyways, so for those of you that might remember the crisis that was the pandemic, I'm now sitting at home. It's been a month, and I'm not kidding. I'm going to the liquor cabinet because I'm not working. So I'm going to the liquor cabinet daily. This is not my lifestyle. I'm a fitness guy, but right. And I'm sipping on banana liqueur. I can't make this crap up. Like, who does that? And I look at it, I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? Because I mean, the liquor cabinet's empty. And I'm now down to the banana liqueur, which like is something you cook with. So I'm like, Craig, dude, we got to come up with a solution here. I'm going bananas. Like, and I was on the CERB for 2 months, which I felt horrible because I needed the cash flow. I didn't want to go into my cash reserves. Long and short of it, Craig asked me a couple of questions. And the one question was, what's the favorite part of your sales training program that everybody raves about? And I said, oh, that's easy. It's overcoming objections. It's the biggest problem that people have. They want to overcome objections. They want to have more confidence. They don't want to come across as pushy, and they want to help more people while they make more money. And I help people do that with the SOS. He's like, great. How can we turn that into an online business? And that was it. I came up with the dojo. I'm a fan of martial arts. I love the idea of being able to get people to learn something, get them to do it, and then get them to teach it. And that's what you do in a dojo, whether it's martial arts or it's something where you're doing it with us, learning a skill, and skills are key. You teach people skills on how to do the right deals, how to walk away from the wrong deals, how to be able to have a better mindset so that you can stretch out of your comfort zone. Well, we're doing the same thing with communication. And so 3.5 years ago now, the dojo was born. And now I've got over 13 staff. I just hired 2 new people. So I'd have to do the numbers. I'm going to say it's 15 with part-time and whatnot. And we've got literally people all over the world that come in on Zoom. And so now when I travel, it's very rarely, it's never I have to. It's because I want to. So I was just in Europe for 6 weeks working from there and having a blast. So there you go, from fitness to this. Awesome. Yeah, long story, but yeah, it's a blast.
I had no clue that the dojo came out of basically the pandemic. Like I thought it was something that you kind of slowly built.
Yeah. I've been teaching SOS for 25 years. So even in my own stores, I was teaching my team how to overcome objections. So this is why, and it was fun because our store, when we were part of the chain of stores, like we were based on a small demographic, we were always a top producing store. And then when, as a rep, I was the number one sales rep for every company I worked for. And I always had the smallest territory as far as number of people in it. And people were like, what's going on? This doesn't make sense. Like for one company I worked for called Bodyguard Fitness, Canada was responsible for 80% of the sales and the US was the bigger market. And they were like there were 3 reps in the States and me in Canada, and we were crushing. And they were like, what are you doing? And I'm like, you guys are trying to sell product and I'm developing people skills. That's the difference.
Yeah, it's one of the things I loved about Sales Dojo training. It was like, it's exactly like how we learned jiu-jitsu, right? You go in there, you get taught, you teach us, okay, this is a sales objection for the day. We'd learn it, and then it'd be like, hey, practice, but
Yep.
not practice of like just go in without really knowing what you're doing. You really showed us, okay, practice with the help of a coach, practice with the partner. Like we'd all go around a circle, repeat the objection till we got it. And then you slowly ramped it up to make it harder and harder. Like the situation is a little different. Yeah. And it works. Right. And even to this day, like I remember you and Craig always said like, hey, keep the script in front of you no matter what, even if you feel like you memorized it. And it just helps. Like, I know where I'm at. Of course, I memorize the objections now and I'm always getting better, but just having that there and knowing, okay, there's different levels to the objections.
Oh, big time. I mean, it's one thing to be able to handle an objection where it's expensive. It's another thing to handle an objection where somebody says, I need to go speak to my husband. Like that changes a lot. And the thing that is really important to remember, and I repeat this often, when emotions go up, intelligence goes down. So what you develop, just like you help people develop the mindset of being able to figure out what's the right deal and being able to let go of a deal that you may feel is right. You're making the data-based decision. In these buying conversations, when somebody throws an objection at you, like if you have a great deal for someone and for whatever reason they say, I want to think about it, the reaction that most people have is, what do you mean you want to think about it? Like, look at this dude. It's a great, well, that's an emotional response. And then you end up saying and coming across as aggressive, and you can turn people off, even if it's the right deal. So when emotions go up, intelligence goes down, goes way further, because it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So the importance of body language, the importance of tone of voice. And so you now, for example, will have a script. And when you get really good at this, and what we help develop our black belts, because we've got a 9-level system to get people from your white belt to a black belt level of overcoming objections. Well, when you get really good, you develop a level of what's called unconscious competence. Like you just know what to say. And more importantly, how to say it. You keep your cool. And so even in the toughest surroundings, the conversations might get uncomfortable. You're cool, you're calm, and you're able to overcome. And then ultimately get that win-win outcome where people are saying, you know what, Patrick, where do I sign? How do I get started? And that's what we want. Like I want people to get to a place where they decide, because that's really what a sales conversation, what we like to call a buying conversation is. I would much rather have somebody with full conviction tell me no, and here's why. Great. I'm happy with that, because now I know, as opposed to the wishy-washy, I don't know, I'm going to think about it. I like to sleep on these things. If that's the case, there's two things that are missing. I haven't brought enough of excitement, right? You have to bring enthusiasm to a conversation. And then number two, you haven't asked the right questions so that they've felt it. Because there's two ingredients that are required to be able to make any sale. Number one is desire. And number two is urgency. If you don't have desire and urgency, nothing happens. So we just want to help people make a decision. That's it.
Yeah, no, it's awesome, especially that shift of like, hey, this is a sales call to no, it's a buying conversation.
100%.
That made things so much easier, especially like knowing, okay, after you do the initial, okay, let's figure out where they're at, what's their situation, and then realizing, okay, maybe this program's not for them. It just made it so easier. It's a win-win still. Like, hey, this might not be a good fit. It's all good. But then when it is a good fit, and then they're just almost blocking themselves, where it's like, oh yeah, they have these objections, but they're blocking themselves. The program will transform their life. It doesn't feel salesy to ask the right questions, bring that excitement, because if they make the right decision, it's still a win-win for them, and it's going to transform their life.
If you do it right, if you actually ask the right questions, and this is part of we have 2 programs within the dojo. So there's what we initially started was, hey, I've got this problem. I don't like sales and I need to overcome objections because people are always hearing it's too expensive. I can't afford it. I need to think about it. I need to speak to my spouse. I don't have the budget. what kind of deal can you give me? So like, these are very common objections that we help people crush. The thing is that there's also the other side of it. And I just mentioned it. You need desire and urgency. And if you do those two very well, then you can actually look at the bubbles, right? You can actually eliminate the objections before they happen. So we actually have a program that's called AIM within the dojo, which stands for Align, Inspire, Motivate, and Empower People to Decide, right? So that's what AIM is for. Objections are normal. And when we as individuals, when I can actually go into a conversation and feel really confident, feel really good, and go into that conversation knowing that if I do encounter an objection, I know exactly what to say and how to say it. That level of confidence is what we call part of the pacing process. When you're speaking with someone and you pitch, you've earned it, and then you deliver your price, you have that level of conviction where people are like, let's go. Like if you do it well, the price doesn't matter because they have that desire and urgency that they want it now.
I like that AIM.
The acronym?
The acronym there.
Yeah.
It makes me, it reminds me of back when I just first started sales I was in the financial industry selling life insurance. And I always dreaded the objection. Like once the objection came, I'm like, oh, like this again. But then after sitting with you, I was just like, no, like I expect the objection. Of course, people are going to have objections. And I was almost excited, like, oh, I get to practice what they taught me. I get to say it in a way that actually adds that desire, adds that urgency. And that shift of how you say it instead of just what you're saying is huge.
If you can get to a place where, again, you're asking tougher questions, then we get to a place where then suddenly the person starts to think twice about leaving and taking action. Because the truth is, when somebody finally decides before they pay, when the decision is made, there's a level of, okay, there's the weight's taken off their shoulders. I mean, if they're going to buy something, if you can show them incredible value, like when the value is high, people buy. So if you show them incredible value and they have an emotional response, and what we like to show people is, hey, what questions can we ask that allow people to feel an emotional response? And then we can also show them with logic. So people make a decision based on emotion and they justify that with logic. So we show you how to put it together and do both, where ultimately it's their choice. And you don't have to push anybody into a decision, because the last thing I want is somebody to feel buyer's remorse or having that feeling of like, what just happened? Like, what did I just, like, no, I want people to feel so good. Like they can't wait to tell someone that they just made this investment, or they can't wait to tell someone, I just bought this, or I'm doing this, because that feels good. So yeah, it's fun.
It's totally that win-win. Now, I guess with you training thousands of salespeople, which is already a feat in itself, what were maybe a memorable success story or transformation you had? Like, did you ever have someone that, I like to call them a hard case, where they're just like so far away from getting the actual result, and then they finally get that transformation? Like, have you trained someone like that? Or
yeah, you know what? And a mutual someone I think Dr. Jonathan Tate. He's also in Craig Ballantyne's mastermind. So Craig recommended John join the dojo. John first started off as an army of one. He is a doctor of regenerative medicine in Tucson, Arizona, and he was struggling. And at the time, his two sons were very, very young, baby at home, and his older son was 2 at the time. So now this is 3 years later, and he just wrote a Google review not 2 days ago for me. And what he said was, over the last 3 years, thanks to the dojo, I've generated easily $250,000 of revenue yearly because of that. Now, here's what's interesting. Amazing. Dr. Jonathan Tate is no longer in the dojo. He now has his team in the dojo. So what happened? John sold himself out of the job. So he got so good that he could afford to bring on people. And what did he get? He got time. That's the beauty of having this skill set. When you get really good at the art of persuasion and conversation with confidence, I mean, even if you're not a business owner, you could be a remote salesperson and work from anywhere. We have people that do this. Another example, guy by the name of Peter Kuchka. Peter was doing adhesive sales in Toronto. So this is pre-pandemic, and he was selling tape, selling adhesives, different companies. He was going to, and they were for manufacturing. Peter today now lives in Costa Rica with his wife and 2 kids. He has left Canada behind. He's living the dream. And guess what he does? He works remotely from his computer, and he is a remote closer thanks to what he learned in the SOS Dojo. I've got countless stories like this, and it just makes me so proud because Peter had to show up and he had to learn the hard way. And he could have learned the real hard way, which was get on the phone and get no, and develop thick skin. What we like to say, and this is why the logo is the way it is, it's a symbol of respect and honor. You got to go into a place where you have a valid environment and what we call a safe place to make mistakes. We're going to lift you up. I would rather, and you've heard this, Patrick, you got to fail forward. The thing is the way that we do it, we help you in a position where if you do fail, it's not costing you any money. So that you fail forward. And then what we do is we put you through multiple repetitions. How do you build a muscle? You got to put in the reps. And then if you do it wrong, well, what we do is we quickly course correct, because that's the problem that people make. They get on a call, they get on a conversation with someone, and they don't realize that they're making a mistake. And when they do make mistakes, then they become bad habits. So we break those habits, we create new ones, and we do deliberate practice. And deliberate practice means you're not doing it with the family dog, or you're not doing it with a buddy, and that ends up becoming, people are joking and they're not really practicing. You're getting together with someone who is a black belt or a sales samurai or a sales sensei, and you're doing it right. And we lift you up, and you're getting together with a group of people that everybody is a mastermind, just like how you and I met. You're surrounded by people that just want to see you succeed. So it happens fast. It's great.
Yeah, it's that speed of implementation on your calls where it's like, make a mistake, okay, quickly course correct, and then you get them to do it again. And then they don't really move on until they get it properly. And then everyone there supports them. They're like, oh yeah, you did great there. And even if people are different levels on the calls, I find that, let's say someone's a black belt, someone's like a white, you can still learn from seeing like the black belt. And you're like, hey, it's similar, but there's just so much extra, like the depth of it is fascinating, I find.
What happens in one short hour is you get the opportunity to see people that might be ahead of you. So everybody starts off as a white belt. You can quickly get your yellow belt. We help you master the first 3 objections, which are, it's too expensive, can't afford it, need to think about it. Like those are your big 3. That's your yellow belt. Then to get to orange belt, you got to go and cover the spouse objection. And we get what we call spouse objection mastery. So quickly, we're going into like the toughest ones right at the beginning. And then we get into the next phases. So you go from orange, you go to green. From green, you go to blue. From blue, you go to red, right? So we get you all the way up to that black belt level. And what's interesting is you could be a blue belt and somebody's a yellow belt. And even if it's not your turn, as you're watching and listening, there's teaching moments that are happening all the time. And it's the repetition when you see it done right. And it's the body language. Like at first, we're just going over the script. It's the tone and the body language that really attracts people, and it makes it fun. And this is where it's interesting, because we don't want people to be robotic. Like, Patrick, you do it your way. We've given you the foundation, but like, it's like a golf swing. If you can go and play and play and play, and if you don't get lessons from a pro, you will develop some horrible habits. Totally. The moment that you start getting lessons from a pro, you start making some differences, and all of a sudden your score goes from 100 and, hey, I'm breaking 100, man. And you could be consistent with that. And then it's just good practice. So yes, you still got to go out and play. So yes, you still got to go out and have buying conversations with people, and you got to get leads, and you got to get what we call lead, set, show, close. You got to get leads, which are, Alex Hermosi would say, what's a lead? It's someone that you can have a conversation with, someone you can somehow communicate with. So a lead could be an email address, a phone number, a DM, a follower on Instagram, somebody in LinkedIn. So now you have a lead. Then set an appointment. Then did they show up? Here's the bubbles again. And then did you close? Right? And when you close, here, fireworks, right? It's so good, right? So don't ask me how this animation on Zoom works for me, but everybody who comes into the dojo go, dude, how did you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm on a Mac and I think it just happens automatically.
I've been seeing it more often actually on the Zoom calls. I'm like, what's going on? Like, it's got to be an update or something. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. So I get these bubbles that show up once in a while. And I think it's the peace sign that does the bubbles. And it's like, hey, how did you do that? I'm like, I don't know. So anyways, yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's like, and that's the thing. There's 4 things that I tell my team, anybody that's, some people would say they're staff members. They're not staff. They're my team. And anybody on my team knows this. The first thing of the 4 things that we want within the SOS dojo, if you become a team member, we've got to have fun. If you're not having, like, because you've been in the dojo before, we share some laughs. And we're not laughing at people, like we're sharing laughs of, hey, let's try that again. And I laugh at myself often, so everybody's laughing along with me. So you got to have fun. Then what we do, we want to make a difference. We want to make a difference. I want to make a difference in your life. I want to make a difference in the people that are watching and listening to this. I really want you to capture the idea of what, and I'm going to give you some gold before we get off in terms of what the SOS is. I'll give you the formula. So I want to make a difference. I want to keep growing. I want you to keep growing. And then ultimately, I want you to get paid. So those are the 4 things that I want for my team. And it's I want for you guys. I want you to have fun, make a difference, keep growing, and get paid. So here's the blueprint to the SOS. How do you overcome an objection? It's a simplicity is elegance. It's such a simple thing, and yet you need to practice it. Step 1 is you need to acknowledge the person you're speaking with. They say, I can't afford it. Well, whether you believe that they're lying to you or not, you have to acknowledge them, and it come from a place of empathy. So if somebody said, Patrick, I can't afford it, the answer is acknowledge them first. Patrick, I really appreciate you letting me know your situation. It's tough, man. And I really appreciate you letting me know where you're at. I'm acknowledging you. I'm going to lead with empathy. Then step 2 is ask a question. And there's a variety of different questions you can ask. I like to ask something to the effect of using some body language. So Patrick, if there was a way for you and I to work together and we can make this more affordable for you, would you be willing to give it a try? And there's a lot to unpack there. All that to be said, it's a 2-step process. What most people do is they'll immediately go into a question, and that becomes abrasive. And that's a problem. So for example, they'll say something like, they'll hear Patrick say, I just can't afford it. And instead of leading with empathy and acknowledging, they get emotional, right? Because when emotions go up, intelligence goes down. So they hear, I can't afford it. And it's like, well, what can you afford? Well, dude, that's pushy. You're coming across it's inauthentic. It's not genuine. You don't care. It's not about making a sale. It's how can I help you? Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. Yeah. And I love that framework. It's simple, but it's not easy. You got to know.
That's it. You got to practice it.
Yeah.
You got to practice it, because what happens is people want to, it's like people wait for their turn to speak, as opposed to, this is what you're saying and this is what you're feeling. Well, one of my members, his name is Doug Noel. He's a lawyer turned peacemaker. He wrote a book called De-Escalate. He helps people stop arguments and fights for good, whether it's in the business setting or it's at home. So he came in, and his problem it wasn't his confidence, is that the problem that he was running into is he couldn't sell it. And so we helped him with his process, and his process actually helped our process of acknowledgement. And he calls it learning people or listening people into existence. People want to be heard.
Yeah.
Right? And people don't care about how much you know until they know about how much you care. So I've been watching you, for example, and it's something that I do as well. I take notes when I'm having a conversation with someone who's interested in my program. I want to find out about them, and I physically take notes. And then I'll review those notes, and based on what they've told me, I'll give them my trusted advisor opinion, my professional opinion, whether it's right, because we got to find out am I the good fit for you? And are you good fit for this program?
Yeah, that's something I learned from you actually. Before I would type my notes and then I would watch the videos after you had told me to, it actually helps to write it out. And yeah, it's a complete game changer. Like I would look at old videos where I'm typing it out and it looks like I'm just like not paying attention to them, or I'm like answering emails, even though I have the intention, I am listening to them.
Of course.
It's that extra layer of like, hey, no, like I'll write down the notes because I'm paying attention to what you're saying, basically.
It's fascinating too, because these little nuances of how we communicate, like body language is 55% of the way we communicate. Everybody wants to go, Patrick, what do I say when I hear this objection? And it's like, listen, that's 7% of the way we communicate. 38% of the way that we communicate is tone of voice. And 55 is body language. So before you even learn how to speak, which takes roughly 2 years, you've had, people holding you, right? And just tilting their head, for example, like this. Well, if you think about it, if you're watching this right now, when your head is straight, you're in this space of authority. When you tilt your head by 15 degrees, you go into empathy. So when you ask a question, you can say, so what are you comparing this to? Or you can go, so what are we comparing this to? And it has a completely different feel. And the subconscious mind picks up on all of these cues. And that's where it gets really interesting. So people say, are we talking Jedi mind tricks here? And the answer is yes, absolutely. That's the art of persuasion. And this is where it gets dangerous, because a lot of people want to learn manipulation tactics. And we have refused people to join our program. And people have asked, so Joe, where did you learn all this stuff? That's nothing. These volumes of books are nothing in comparison to what I've learned live from people. So I'll just throw some names out that you may or may not know. Jim Rohn was one of my first ever teachers. And if you guys know a guy by the name of Tony Robbins, who I've also learned from, Tony's original mentor was Jim Rohn. Brian Tracy, Chet Holmes, Mark Victor Hansen, Jack Canfield. Those two guys were the chicken soup for the soul guys. I did a lot of work with Mark Victor Hansen. Blair Singer, Craig Ballantyne, Bedros Keuilian. So I mean, and Bob Proctor, Think and Grow Rich. I mean, like if you, that's one where it's like, you must reread that book, taking the time to think so that you can grow rich. And we can go on and on.
It's that combo of mindset, but also learning these techniques that, you're not going to learn this stuff in school. I wish you did, but
never
not really the case.
No, the school system is set up to create drones. And if you want to be independent and have time freedom as well as financial freedom, you've got to pay to play. And that's a tough lesson for people. And it's never too late. It's never too late. That's the wonderful thing about it. The development of this skill alone will get you to places that you could only dream of.
Yeah, totally. That's one of those big lessons I learned in post-pandemic is like, it is totally pay to play. And don't even want to imagine what my life would look like if I didn't have that lesson. Yeah.
And dude, you're young. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur since my first store. I was 20 years old. And then I turned employee and then back to entrepreneurship. There's the best job, if you want to make a lot of money and make a big difference in people's lives, it's sales. If you know how to sell, you can write your own ticket. You can work anywhere and make as much as you want. That is a fact. And then if you're an entrepreneur and you've got something of value to give, then you have to know how to have conversations with people where they're compelled to buy.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know your time is valuable. I got one last question before I let you go there. And I know that, business has been always changing in this new world, I guess, we live in. How do you stay ahead of the trends and adapt your strategies to remain still relevant? Or are you finding that old strategies still work? They're just slightly changed or shifted?
Yeah. So you just mentioned something before getting on the call or getting on the podcast going live. I mean, I think it's important to be able to stay ahead of the curve with technology. Technology is something that we need to stay on top of. And yet the old adage of what I like, the boutique approach, still holds true. So there are things that from a perspective of building a relationship, that's not going to change. I think we're still a ways off before a computer or an AI is going to be able to truly relate as we do as human beings. And we crave the relationship. Even if you love being alone or if you're introverted, we still have, like Shauna, my wife, is a perfect example. She's an introvert and yet loves to be in a community of family, friends. So that's the other thing. So you still have to be able to build KLT, know, like, and trust. And you still have to stay on top of time-saving technology. And that could be social media. You shared with me something today. I wrote it down because Confucius say bad handwriting better than good memory. So it was Opus Clip. And I was like, what is that? And I wrote it down. Now I'm going to tell some of my team members, hey, let's look at this, because if I can help save you more time, then we can create more content. And that just helps us spread the message. So I think it's a blend of both. And being open-minded is probably one of the best things that you could look at. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I think the technology thing is huge, especially with like, things change so fast.
AI now has changed the game, and I mean, I embrace it. I've been using Chat GPT, and it's great. And again, Chat GPT, even if you teach it to go in your own voice, you still got to edit. You still got to do some things. So it's not like we're not at that point where a robot's going to take over and it's Terminator time. That's not it at all. We still have our work to do. And then conversations like this, I mean, you can tell that there's some people that are creating AI bots, but even other things like Blinkist. I'll get books done through Blinkist, and it helps me save time. And I get the gist of what they want to teach. Because I think for most people, I mean, you've authored a book.
Yeah.
A book is an extension of your business card.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it goes, the technology thing, it's cool. I don't think it's scary. I think, what you mentioned, like once you have an open mind, like it's something you could really use. It's not going to be Terminator anytime soon. And I feel like you still have to be the driver of the AI. Like,
100%.
It's great, saves you time, but you still have to be the one to like critically think, guide it, edit, and then still drive the tech.
Yeah, I mean, there's things that are tried and true. So there's some old school things, and maybe this is a thing about my age. I mean, technology is only going to go so far because it's still going to need people. You need people, whether it's a lead or a community, it takes people. AI are not people. AI are not making purchases. It's people that make purchases. So we still need to be able to help people get to that point of decision, help them overcome their own fears, which is our objections. Because why do people object? They're afraid to make the wrong decision. And in some cases, they're afraid to make the right one.
Yeah, still can't replace the human soul.
No, you can't.
No.
Got it, man. You got it.
Awesome. Cool. No, it was a great conversation. Super excited and looking forward to more conversations with you.
Thanks,
where can
Patrick.
people reach out to you, Joe?
Yeah. So if you want to follow me on Instagram, you can look up Joe Marcoux. My actual Instagram channel or tagline is at SOS Dojo. Another very popular place to find me is on LinkedIn. So if you're business to business, you definitely go on LinkedIn. Or you can find me on Instagram, Joe Marcoux, either way. Or you can visit sosdojo.com. Come in for a free session, as a matter of fact. And then what I'm going to do with Patrick is I'm going to give him, we'll be able to I'll give you something for free for everybody who's watching or listening. I've got how to overcome the 26 toughest objections in sales. It's the best cheat sheet you'll ever find. I'll give Patrick the link to that. And then you guys could get that absolutely free so you can use it. Because remember, one of the things that I want to do is I want to have fun and make a difference, keep growing and get paid. Well, this is going to help you guys do the same. So I'll give you guys that absolutely free. Enjoy it.
Awesome.
Go overcome those objections.
Oh, hey, thank you, Joe.
It's my
really
pleasure.
Appreciate it. And then, we'll see you in the next episode. And then,
all right, buddy.
Awesome
Take care.
conversation. Yeah, take care.